So, the question I want to answer today is, can you take the Celestial Warlock as your only healer in a party? Personally, I think yes, it is a viable thing. You get Cure Wounds, you get Revivify, you get Healing Light at level 1, and these are all things that will aid healing your party. And I think that it can be used as a substitute for a cleric. If you don't want to go the traditional route of taking a cleric, even though it's one of the most powerful classes in the game, I can totally understand that. Sometimes a warlock is quite fun and appealing. You get limited spell slots, but having all of the Eldritch invocations really bolsters up the opportunities and possibilities you can use this class for. Is it the best healer in the game? Not by a long shot, but I think that it does have enough tools to justify taking it as your only healer. Of course, if you have a well-balanced party, you're going to have someone that can create potions, or someone that can heal, that has taken the healer feat, or has a healing kit. And having a bard in your back pocket is always helpful for any party. So let's go through step by step at why the Celestial Warlock is such a good subclass. Hi, my name's Rich, and today we're going to be talking about the Celestial Warlock patron. Now, this patron is the cliched healer. Every spellcasting class gets a healer archetype. For example, you have the Circle of Dreams Druid, you have the Divine Soul Sorcerer, and for the Warlock you get the Celestial. With this subclass, you make a pact with the celestial beings, and this can be something exciting like unicorns or ki-rin, which I believe there's a ki-rin in Monster Hunter World, or some sort of divine entity. If you want to use one of those weird angel pictures with the triangle with the eye and all of the things spinning around it, then that would be really cool instead of the traditional Archangel Gabriel with the wings and the flaming sword. It's all about getting connected to a celestial creature from the upper planes. For want of a better expression, this is the heavenly quarter of the world. Because of this, a lot of the characters are more divine and holy. They want to smite undead, or they want to rescue the poor and defenseless. So you're bordering on paladin territory when it comes to roleplay, but the Celestial is a warlock, so traditionally warlocks have more nefarious spells. You do get an expanded spell list that gives you some holy righteous spells, but I think you can almost reflavor it to doing bad things to try and help the greater good. So this adds a bit of moral complexity to the character. Of course, for a one-shot or a smaller campaign, you could totally go for a one-dimensional character, but I think for a longer campaign, this also lends itself to some good flexibility. Just make sure you set the boundaries at session 0 with your DM. Do you want the DM to play the patron, or do you want to play it? And so establishing these boundaries at the start can help greatly in the long run. Speaking of the expanded spell list, let's have a look at it. At level 1, you get Cure Wounds, which is good, but it's not as good as Healing Word. Cure Wounds, you have to be in range to actually cast it. It does heal more hit points, but at the same time, the problem is, as long as you're above more than 1 hit point, you're up and ready to fight in this game, so sometimes it can devolve into a swinging match between 0 hit points and death saves, and being in 1 or 2 hit points and being alive and ready to use your action. You also get Guiding Bolt, which is interesting because as a warlock you already have Eldritch Blast as a damage dealing cantrip, so Guiding Bolt can help buff up your party to a certain aspect to try and get more damage, more hits in, but it's kind of redundant. It's not 100%. On other classes it's fantastic, but on the warlock it feels like putting extra chocolate sauce on the ice cream sundae. It's already good, you're just adding a little extra to it. At level 2 you get Lesser Restoration, which is a staple. It doesn't have a lot of juice, it doesn't have a lot of flair, but it's a functional spell that you're going to use if you need it. It's better to have it in your back pocket than to need it and not have access to it. You also get Flaming Sphere, which is like a mini fireball of sorts. It deals fire damage, so the restrictions to all fire damage spells apply. It's a great way to deal damage, but at the same time, a lot of creatures are immune or have resistance to fire, so bear that in mind when you're casting the spell. The third level spells are where this subclass shines. You gain access to Revivify. Now, this is one of the cleric's most powerful spells, so to get it as a warlock is nothing short of a miracle. It does have a high barrier to entry, needing expensive components to cast the spell, but having a second player that knows Revivify can really change the dynamics of the game. You can also use Daylight, which depending on the setting, if you're in the Underdark and you cast this, it's going to give a disadvantage to every drow or every creature with sunlight sensitivity. Technically, it can dispel magical darkness as well, so that's always nice to have. It's a great utility spell and works well with the theme of the Celestial Warlock as well. The level 4 spells, you get Wall of Fire, which is ridiculously good. All of the wall spells have great utility. This one deals damage. And the caveat I mentioned earlier with the fire resistance still applies, but getting access to a wall spell is always helpful. And the fact that you're a warlock, so you always have to cast the highest possible spell, really helps us out as well. Now, with Guardians of Faith, you can have lots of little unicorns or something more exotic flying around you and tearing chunks out of the enemy. It's an area of effect spell, and it deals great damage. Also, allowing it to get reflavored into something that's more appropriate adds to flexibility. I think that this subclass, you could repaint it into a different setting, but keep the same mechanical core rules, and so it's only limited by your imagination. The 5th level spells are Greater Restoration and Flame Strike. Now, Greater Restoration is niche, just like its cousin, Lesser Restoration, but being able to cure petrification can really change the tide in battle. As a DM, you should be aware when the players get this ability because it opens up a plethora of different ways you can use monsters and abilities without the fear of killing the party. You also get some bonus cantrips in Light and Sacred Flame. Now, Sacred Flame does good damage, but is outshined by Eldritch Blast. They both have their different applications, but personally, as a DM, I would allow the modifications to Eldritch Blast from the Eldritch invocations to apply to Sacred Flame as well. But that's just a little house rule I have. At level 1, you get Healing Light, and this just emphasizes what the character class is all about. You get a pool of die and you can heal creatures up, so it's great to have. It's very similar to the Shepherd Druid's ability, I believe, but being able to heal without using a spell slot can take the sting out of the Warlock's disadvantages. And it's tied to a long rest as well. Normally, Warlocks love short rests, but you have to do some inventory management with your die pool. At level 6 you gain Radiant Soul, you gain resistance to radiant damage, and you can add an extra charisma modifier to any flame damage that you do. This can help buff up the more fire-based spells that you get with your expanded spell list, but you should do the number crunching and maths to try and make sure you get the biggest bang for your buck. At level 10 you get Celestial Resistance. You can give yourself and all your party members temp hit points every time you rest. It's good, but I think for a level 10's ability it's not the best one you can get. There are other level 10 abilities that far outshine it, but it's still a nice thing to have. Nobody's going to refuse temp hit points. Finally, at level 14, you get Seething Vengeance. Essentially, when you're about to die, when you hit 0 hit points, you can give out a burst of radiant energy that damages everything that's close to you, and you can heal up a load of hit points. This has been echoed in some other subclasses as the Keystone ability, and it's good, but I don't know if it's good enough for the level you get it. I think it's fantastic for level 14 and 15, but when you get to the higher levels, then it's nice to have, but it's not as powerful. It's not on par with the damage you're dealing with other things. Quick reminder, if you want some free subclasses, you can head over to the Patreon and download some there. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye!